The Man in the Van. This happened about 27 years ago, when I worked at a Pizza Hut. I worked at the store, not a driver. I was a server to people who ate at the restaurant. The salad bar we had at the restaurant was big at the time. It was new, and we had a lot of people come into the restaurant just for that. The day had been long and hard. A lot of people in the restaurant the entire day. Mostly rude customers the whole day, so I was done at this point, ready to clock out and go home. There was just me and a couple of my coworkers left, just in case we got a straggler come in before we closed. The countdown began when it hit 30 minutes left. I began to clean all the tables. My coworkers began cleaning the back of the restaurant. But about 5 minutes later, I heard a loud rattling pull into the parking lot. Then a loud bang when the van stopped in the parking space in front of the door to the restaurant. I looked out into the parking lot through the door and saw an old rusted van, steam rising from it in the cool, crisp night air. It reminded me of the van in Jeepers Creepers. I stood there for what seemed like 5 minutes before the van door finally swung open. Out walked a huge hulking man in a long, dirty, stained, light brown coat. When he walked in the restaurant, I got a better look at him. He had long, dirty, stringy hair, stains all over his body that looked like dried blood, and a smell emanating from him that smelled like death and shit dripping out of a rotting carcass. I said good evening and pointed him towards the first stall. He grunted and sat down. I put my rag and bottle of cleaner down on the front counter and went back and took his order. As I approached, his trench coat looked lumpy. I thought it was strange, but I was so out of it at that point, I didn't give it a second thought. I asked him what he would like, and he ordered a large cheese pan pizza and the salad bar. He then said, which I thought was strange, that he wanted no toppings because he brought his own. Like I said, I thought it was strange. What the hell does that even mean? I thought. But it was close at this point to closing. I didn't want to argue with him. He was creepy acting already. So I said, "That'll be fine, sir. I'll go put your order in, and it will be out shortly." I went back into the kitchen and told my 2 coworkers about the man and how strange he seemed. We could see him from the back. We watched as he began talking to himself and rocking back and forth in his seat. He then stood up and walked over to the salad bar, talking to himself the entire time, giggling and laughing. It was very creepy and eerie. We were very uncomfortable watching this play out, and I was dreading having to bring out the pizza. When he sat down, we noticed he reached down in his coat and brought out a bag and started putting red pieces from inside the bag into his salad. My coworker handed me the pizza, and I brought it out. I was trembling a little. I did not want to get close to this man again. I got to the table and handed him the pizza. When I put it down in front of him, he looked at me quick, with a wide, creepy grin on his face, and said, "See, I told you. I brought my own toppings." I looked down in horror. Those red pieces he was pulling out were chunks of human flesh, even tattoos on some of the pieces. I screamed. He reached out and tried to grab me, still laughing, but I pulled away, turned, and ran to the back. I told my coworkers. We ran to the manager's office, locked the door, and called the police. When the police arrived, shockingly, he was still sitting there, eating his fleshy meal. When the police searched his van, they found the bodies of 3 decomposed cut-up women and 2 men. They said it looked like he had been eating on them for days. I didn't work at that Pizza Hut much longer after that. I'm just thankful I was able to make it out of that situation alive, because it could have ended much, much worse. Drive-thru. Henry pulled into the drive-thru and looked at the large illuminated menu. He was tired and hungry, and this was the only place open at this time of night. After looking at all the professionally photographed shots of food, he decided what he wanted. He looked at the speaker expectantly and got nothing. Henry looked around the parking lot. Perhaps he had made a mistake, and the place was closed after all. There were a handful of cars, and the lights were on inside. "Hello?" he said, feeling a little weird for speaking first. Nothing but silence. There were no cars ahead of him, and nobody waiting behind him. He continued to wait, getting anxious. If he didn't get something from here, he would have to go home empty-handed. He didn't have any food at the house. Just as he considered driving off, he heard something in the speaker. It sounded like someone slamming cabinets shut. Were they just ignoring him? "Can I get some service or what? Come on, I'm fucking hungry," Henry said, his face feeling hot. There was a rustling in the speaker, like someone was adjusting a headset. The voice that came through sounded like a young man, and he sounded amused with his anger. So sorry about that wait, sir. What can we get you today?" said the voice on the other side, like they were trying to keep from laughing. "You think this is a joke, kid? You know how long I've been sitting here?" said Henry, hanging out his window. "Sorry about that, sir. We had some complications in the kitchen. All straightened up now," said the young man. Henry sighed and ordered his food. "Will that be all?" said the kid. "Yeah." "Pull forward." "Wait, how much is the total?" Henry asked. "Nothing. Just the same muffled noises as before, accompanied by the sound of the guy breathing into the mic." Henry groaned and pulled around. Arriving at the window, he could see the young man with the headset, and nobody else. Henry felt a twinge of guilt. They were short-staffed all along. The young man had his back turned at the bagging station, furiously shoving things into a paper sack. He hurried over and threw open the window. A rancid smell wafted from inside, like something had been horribly burned. The employee wore a heavily stained shirt and a tired smile. Henry went to offer his debit card, but the young man shoved the food towards him. The bag was soaked and dripping with grease, like a bunch of fresh fries had been dumped in. "All right, man, shit." He took the bag hesitantly, and when he tried to hand in the payment, the young man slammed the window shut, bolting back into the kitchen. Confused, Henry turned on the cab light to check the order. Behind the restaurant, he heard the back door shove open and the scuff of sneakers on pavement. The bag was filled with sizzling body parts. Sally Ogden Sanderson. My brain was so fuzzy from weariness and fatigue that I didn't even register the little door chime as 2 customers walked in the gas station shop. I willed my heavy eyelids to open and focus. A middle-aged man and his daughter scanned the rows of cheap frozen fast food and expired hot dogs. The father whispered something to his daughter, opted to pace in front of the coffee machine as she walked up to me. I think I said something to the effect of, "Hello, what can I get you?" but my words came out as a mumbled yawn. "Small Americano, no sugar," she ordered briskly, voice carrying a tinge of urgency. Again, my brain went on autopilot, and I asked for her name. There really is no point, considering she's the only customer, but I've had the question drilled into my head since day one. "Sally Ogden Sanderson," she repeated. "My name is Sally Ogden Sanderson." "All right." I grabbed a cup and scribbled Sally on it. "No." She leaned forward onto the counter, staring at me intently. "Sally Ogden Sanderson." I was confused. "Yeah, I got that." "No, not Sally," she insisted. I found her voice grating my ears. "Sally Ogden Sanderson." Too sleepy to explain that I don't have the patience for any bullshit, I showed her the cup with Sally written on it. "No, you don't get it." She was starting to sound like a broken record. "I'm Sally Ogden Sanderson. Don't you know who I am?" I squinted really hard and rifled through my memories for the name. Celebrities, missing persons, porn stars. Nothing came up. But I just wanted to get the job over with, so I went to scribble on Ogden Sanderson on the cup. My brain short-circuited from sleep deprivation, and it ended up being an unintelligible scrawl across the cup. I sighed and threw away the cup, ready to start over. Sally Ogden Sanderson frowned impatiently, grabbed another cup, and proceeded to write her name down. Just as she finished the last few letters, the older man called out to her, "Honey, we need to get going." "But the coffee!" "We still have some left in the back seat." Sally tossed the cup at me and turned to leave. I held it, dumbfounded at the whole exchange, and watched the pair drive away in their car. I looked down at the cup in my hands, and what was written on it drove all my sleep away. S. Sally. O. Ogden. S. Sanderson. S.O.S. Everyone keeps on watching their screens. I woke up with the dying sun slanting orange through the window. It was 6 p.m., sunset, and I had fallen asleep over my revision. Tomorrow was the big math test, and I had been revising non-stop throughout the day and night. My stomach roared with hunger. I had sustained myself with crackers and a pot of instant noodles, but that wasn't enough for the day. I sighed. Maybe it was best to take a break after all. "Mom," I called out tentatively, patting down the stairs. "I'm hungry." Silence answered. The wind ruffled my hair. Then the sound of raucous laughter. I tiptoed into the living room to see my family gathered around the television set. That was the first strange thing. My family usually didn't watch television. They don't even watch Netflix. The other strange thing was that they were laughing with joy, laughing until tears streamed down their cheeks. I peered at the television set, but my own distorted reflection stared back at me from a black screen. "Mom?" I repeated, standing in front of the television set. "I'm hungry." My mom erupted in laughter in response, her eyes fixated on a spot somewhere to my left. "Come play with me," she cried. My stomach rumbled again, so disturbed I left the house in search of food. The streets were strangely quiet, devoid of traffic, which was strange since I lived in a big city and not a small town. Curtains were swept over the windows, The doors were shut. Only the birds chirped, and the streetlights flickered as they came on. Finally, I found a McDonald's and went inside. Patrons were glued to their smartphone screens, their jaws wide open and their food cold. Aunts marched on the table, taking fries and sauces and anything sweet. The employees had their back towards the counter, staring at a giant television screen. Then, as if perfectly synchronized, the entire restaurant erupted into laughter. "Hello?" I yelled. "Can I have a Big Mac and some fries, please?" The employees did not tear their eyes away from the television screen. They muttered something that sounded like, "Come play with me," and a spot of drool dripped to the floor. Words suddenly dripped in red across the screen. "Come play with me," it screamed. Followed by a picture of a cartoon clown. His face was as white as bone, and his hair was red as blood, bouncing up in curls on his head. His smile slashed across his face, and he rubbed his hands in delight upon seeing me. "Come play with me," he sang. Disturbed, I turned away, but then my phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out. The clown's face grinned on the screen. He held up a red balloon. His eyes were twin spirals. I couldn't look away. Time stood still. "Come, play with me," I muttered. Fingers. I think a little treat is in order. The old boy's happy face drawing us in. Besides, I think we've earned it. How about this for bonus points? It's practically empty. A wait in a short queue, and soon make our order. In the kitchen, a massive metallic crashing could be heard. Sound of someone getting their arse fired, I'm guessing. I had to ask if everything was all right. They just said someone dropped one of the mixes, so nothing to worry about. I take our order back to our table when we hear shouting from the staff area. Turning to my wife, I told her, "Hope you're taking all this in. I take you to a restaurant for dinner, and now live theater. And what do I get? These fries are cold." I'll get it sorted right away. No staff at the counter, but plenty of noise being made. More noise than you'd think necessary. Then finally, a guy who looks like he sneezed into a big bowl of the white powder. His eyes were red, and he seemed to be heaving instead of breathing. "You all right, mate?" "Just want to get some fresh fries." Between you and me, we're about to trial a new product. He pulls out a bloodied kitchen knife and with expert force chopped his hand off and tosses it into one of the fryers. "Chicken fingers. How many would you like? Or would you rather have other cuts?" "I'll just go check with the missus. Why don't you get back to the kitchen? It might get busy." I fought the urge to walk away backwards. That wouldn't look natural, and likely lead to the friendly floured fried chicken fryer flinging himself at me with his knife. Seems everybody else caught this show, as even the wife was outside. For some reason, nobody has yet to call the police. I'll just rectify that. People keep arriving and leaving the drive-thru, so I ask those in the know to spread the word. We do our best to stop people unwittingly fall victim to the Southern fried cannibal's blade, or worse, his cooking. While we wait, I can see him tucking into a battered hand. Not sure whose, but I'd be willing to bet it's his. We told the police all we knew, and before they escorted the man out to what I assume will be the hospital, then a padded cell. In the news, They stated he was being held under Mental Health Act. He killed 6 staff and injured 4 others. They wouldn't give details, but they are encouraging people who visited the restaurant yesterday to get in touch. The Spooky Old McDonald's. My name is Carrie Rogers. I am a young mother. I have 2 children, a son named Michael, age 10, and a daughter named Angela, age 9. I do not like to take my kids to McDonald's too much because it's a fast food place and I like my kids to eat healthier. But in saying that, we all love the place and I do take them sometimes. My family usually goes to a local McDonald's, but we saw another new opening, one off the beaten path, and decided to go to that one instead this time. As soon as I drove up in my station wagon with my kids to this McDonald's that we have never been to before, I noticed that it was an old-style McDonald's, like it was from the time when it first opened in 1955 by Ray Kroc. That did not matter to me, though. Maybe they wanted a retro feel to it is all. I thought happily to myself as my kids got out of the station wagon and I closed the door after they got out. As soon as we all got inside, there was an Arctic-like chill in the place, like the air conditioner was set on high. It was actually uncomfortably cold. I even had a bad feeling about the place immediately, for some reason, and a small shiver went up my spine. I wanted to turn back and go out the door with my children, but I did not want to disappoint my kids. Besides, the tall, thin man was staring at me from behind the counter. He was dressed in a McDonald's uniform and hat of the past. I did not like this man's stare. It was an evil one. He did not smile. He looked like a tall and thin vampire from the horror movies. He actually looked like the actor Julian Beck, who played the evil Reverend Cain in the movie Poltergeist 2. And he also looked about 80 years old, like he was a bit too old to be behind the counter working at McDonald's. Usually, you had teenagers or young working mothers these days working there. One more thing. I did not like the way he was staring at my children, like he was a pet or something. He seemed like a man up to no good. I just wanted to order my meal for my kids and leave this McDonald's as soon as possible. I asked Angela what she wanted to eat. "Let me see. I don't know, Mom," she replied, looking up at the menu with her cute face and long golden blonde hair. I was just about to ask my son Michael what he wanted to eat, while his sister decided, when Angela said, "I think I will take the Happy Meal." That's always a good choice for a pretty young girl such as yourself, the creepy McDonald's man behind the counter said. "And what would you like, young man?" he asked my son. I did not like this man asking my son this instead of me, but I did not say anything. Michael then looked up at the menu with a thoughtful look on his cute, red freckled face. "Okay, I think I decided. I will take the 10-piece chicken McNuggets and French fries and a soda," he replied happily. I then ordered my McDonald's Big Mac meal. As soon as I did, the spooky man went back and got everything himself and gave us our meals. In fact, nobody was in this cold McDonald's place except us and this creepy man behind the counter, which was very strange. This was in the month of July, and the place should have been well filled with families, teenagers, and other people. As soon as I paid him, He handed us our food, and we headed out the door. "Have a nice day, and come back real soon." The creepy, thin, vampire-faced McDonald's man said as he brushed his bony fingers across my daughter's golden blonde hair and touched her pretty face. I did not like him doing this either. I do not like strangers touching my children at all, especially these days, with all the crime and dangerous people out there that could hurt them. You could never be too careful out there. My children and I got back into our station wagon and left for home. When we got home, we started to eat our McDonald's meals. Actually, the burger was not bad, and my kids liked their meals too. My husband was away at work and said he would eat later, so we ate without him. I did wish I ordered him something too, though. But the spooky-looking man at the McDonald's really creeped me out, and I forgot. I then heard my doorbell ring and opened it up in shock to see the vampire-looking McDonald's man standing there with a McDonald's bag in one hand and balloons in the other. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am, but here is your husband's Big Mac, French fries, and a soda," he said with his eerie voice. I just stared in shock at him. "Well, this is what you ordered, too," he said as he handed me the bag and the balloons and left dancing to his McDonald's logo car. In fact, I did want to order my husband this specific meal, but I did not. And how did this man know where my family lived and what I was thinking anyway? I did not tell him any of this. I thought to myself, shaking all over as I closed the door. That night, my husband came home, and I told him the whole story of what had happened that day at McDonald's and the creepy McDonald's man. My husband thought I was just working too hard with the kids and just needed rest. He did not believe me. My husband then turned on the TV, and we saw an old black and white commercial of an old McDonald's. What's worse, it had the creepy vampire-looking McDonald's man from behind the counter talking about how good the place was. "Come one, come all, bring your kitties," he said very creepily. I told my husband that was the man I saw at McDonald's today, working behind the counter that took our orders. My husband said that particular McDonald's closed down when he was a kid living here, and the man on the screen was a child killer and ped that happened to work at that particular McDonald's at the time. My husband also said that the father of one of the violated kids shot the creepy old man to death for violating his young daughter. He said this place had been closed and abandoned for decades. I asked my husband if we could drive down to see the McDonald's again and see if that creepy man still was behind the counter. My husband nodded his head and laughed. "I told you, the place was abandoned for decades, but we can check it out tomorrow morning if you wish," he replied. "Without the kids, of course. They do not need to see all this," I answered back, still frightened about all of this, as he nodded again, and we went to sleep. In the morning, my husband and I took our sedan to the McDonald's I went to with the kids the other day. And my husband was right. The McDonald's was all boarded up and abandoned. No creepy, thin, vampire-looking man behind the counter either. I then looked at my husband as he looked at me. "You see, honey, I was right," he said to me as he hugged me. "How do you explain that old McDonald's commercial and the creepy man coming to our door to deliver a meal I did not order for you. But he knew somehow. Probably a mistake about putting that old commercial on, and I think you may have ordered that McDonald's meal yourself, but forgot. The children do have you busy all the time, he replied to me, with concern on my face. I just nodded my head, but I then thought to myself, I saw what I saw, and nobody could ever change my mind about that. I just hoped I would never see that creepy McDonald's man again, even in my darkest nightmares. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember, you can find me on Instagram at duchess_of.darkness or duchessofdarkn2 on Twitter. Also, please send me your stories or poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. Until next time.